Hi. Welcome back to another episode of Horror Talker. Thank you so much for the love you are giving to this channel. It really is very motivating. In today's episode, we have a set of true stories which left these truckers questioning their existence. Let's listen to what they have to share. I've been trucking for over a decade, crisscrossing the vast expanse of America's highways. Most nights, it's just me and the open road, but that one fateful night changed everything. I was entrusted with a cargo so mysterious, it sent shivers down my spine. My deadline was clear: deliver it by midnight. But as the hours ticked away, I found myself in the middle of a nightmare that still haunts my every waking moment. It all began in a small town in Texas, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else. I had just completed a routine delivery when my dispatcher called with urgent instructions. "Listen up, Jake," he said, his voice gruff but unusually hushed. "We've got a special cargo for you. Real hush-hush stuff. You're taking it to a facility upstate. Make sure it's there by midnight sharp, no delays." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. There was something strange about this assignment, something he wasn't telling me. But a trucker's gotta do what a trucker's gotta do. I picked up the cargo from a nondescript warehouse, its windows boarded up and security cameras trained on every inch of the place. The cargo itself was housed in a series of metal crates, locked up tighter than Fort Knox. It was heavy too, much heavier than I'd expected. I couldn't help but wonder what it contained. As I hit the road, I felt the first prickle of unease. My CB radio crackled to life with the voice of a fellow trucker, Billy. "Hey, Jake, you headed upstate?" he asked. "Yeah, just started," I replied. "You better be careful, man. Word on the road is there's some weird stuff happening up that way. People seeing strange lights and hearing even stranger noises." I dismissed it as trucker chatter, just rumors and tall tales. But as the miles rolled on, things started to get bizarre. It was around 10 p.m. when I hit the first roadblock. A line of orange cones stretched across the highway, forcing me to slow down. A group of men in dark suits and sunglasses stood around, scrutinizing every passing vehicle. When they saw my truck, they waved me through without a word. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me, that they knew exactly what I was carrying. And that feeling grew stronger when my cell phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID, but it was just a string of random numbers. I answered cautiously. "Hello." A distorted voice on the other end said, "You're carrying something valuable, Jake. Something that doesn't belong to you." My heart pounded in my chest. Who is this? But the call ended abruptly, leaving me with a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I looked at the crates in my trailer, wondering just what I'd gotten myself into. The next obstacle came in the form of a dense fog that rolled in out of nowhere, reducing visibility to near zero. I couldn't see more than a few feet in front of me, and the highway seemed to stretch on forever. As I strained my eyes to see through the mist, a pair of headlights appeared behind me, blindingly bright. The vehicle tailgated me mercilessly, its horn blaring. Panic set in as I realized I was trapped in this suffocating fog with a relentless pursuer. The voice on my phone came back, more chilling this time. "You can't escape, Jake. We know where you're going." I pushed the accelerator to the floor, my heart racing. The fog seemed to thicken around me, closing in like a vice. The pursuit continued, relentless and unyielding. Hours passed, but the fog showed no sign of lifting. I felt like I was in some otherworldly nightmare. Every time I checked the time, it was as if it stood still, mocking my desperation. Then, another strange occurrence. My GPS malfunctioned, showing my truck parked in the middle of an empty field. I cursed and tried to reset it, but it remained stuck on that absurd location. That's when I noticed a figure in the distance. A man, standing alone in the field, watching me. I squinted through the fog, but I couldn't make out any features. He just stood there, motionless, as if waiting for something. I decided to pull over and confront him, maybe get some answers. But as I approached, he vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the eerie silence of the fog. With a shudder, I returned to my truck and continued driving, but the strange occurrences only escalated. Unmarked black SUVs appeared on the highway, tailing me like wolves tracking their prey. I tried to shake them, but they stuck to me like glue. The voice on the phone grew more sinister. "We're closing in, Jake. You won't make it." I felt trapped, like a mouse being hunted by a pack of cats. But I couldn't give up, I had to make that delivery. Finally, as the clock struck midnight, I arrived at the designated facility. It was an abandoned industrial complex in the middle of nowhere, with no signs of life except for a lone security guard standing by the entrance. I pulled up and got out, clutching the keys to the cargo with trembling hands. The security guard approached, his expression cold and impassive. "You're late," he said. I glanced at my watch. "I'm right on time." He shook his head. "No, you're late." Before I could react, he lunged at me, trying to snatch the keys from my hand. I fought back, desperately trying to protect the cargo, but he was too strong. As we struggled, I managed to get a look at his face, and my blood ran cold. His eyes were blank, lifeless, and his skin was as pale as a corpse. This was no ordinary security guard. I finally managed to break free, but it was too late. He had the keys, and he opened the cargo crates one by one. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. It was row after row of identical, life-sized dolls. Each one looked eerily real, down to the last detail. But it was their eyes that sent a chill down my spine. They were all the same, glassy and lifeless, like the security guards. The guard turned to me and smiled, a grotesque, unnatural grin. "You should have been on time, Jake." I turned and ran, leaving my truck and the cargo behind. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I was far away from that forsaken place. To this day, I can't forget those dolls or the pursuit that led me to them. I don't know what they were or who was after them, but I know one thing for sure, some mysteries are better left unsolved. It was a moonless night in the heartland of America, the kind of night that stretched the limits of your headlights and played tricks on your tired eyes. I'd been on the road for hours, the hum of the engine and the endless stretch of asphalt my only company. But that solitude was about to be broken. I was somewhere in the barren expanse of West Texas, a place where the highway seemed to stretch on forever. The radio had long since lost its signal, and my eyes were heavy with fatigue. That's when I saw him, a lone figure on the side of the road, thumb out, hitchhiking in the dead of night. I'd heard all the warnings about picking up hitchhikers, especially on a desolate stretch of highway like this one, but something about this guy tugged at my conscience. He looked young, maybe mid-20s, with a scruffy beard and a tattered backpack slung over his shoulder. His clothes were rumpled, and he had that haunted look in his eyes. I slowed down and pulled over, the gravel crunching beneath my tires. The hitchhiker approached cautiously, and as he got closer, I could see that his face was pale, almost sickly. "Need a lift?" I called out as I rolled down the window. He nodded gratefully and climbed into the cab. His voice was shaky as he introduced himself as Alex. I couldn't help but notice the trembling in his hands as he settled into the passenger seat. "Thanks for stopping," he said, his words hesitant. "I've been walking for miles." I offered him a bottle of water from my stash, and he accepted it with a grateful nod. As we continued down the empty highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Alex's nervous glances and the way he fidgeted in his seat set my nerves on edge. After a few minutes of silence, he finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're a trucker, right?" I nodded, keeping my eyes on the road. "That's right. Long hauler. What about you? What brings you out here in the middle of the night?" He hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether to share his story. Finally, he sighed and leaned in closer. "I need to warn you about something," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "Something you're carrying in the cargo hold." I glanced at him, my curiosity piqued. "What are you talking about?" Alex took a deep breath and leaned back in his seat, his eyes locked onto mine. "You're carrying something dangerous, something they don't want anyone to know about. It's hidden in the cargo hold, and it needs to be stopped before it's too late." I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, skepticism gnawing at the edges of my mind. "What are you talking about? What's in the cargo hold?" He hesitated again, as if searching for the right words. "I don't know exactly, but it's a threat, a grave danger to everyone on this highway. I overheard some people talking about it, and they said it needs to be destroyed before it reaches its destination." My grip on the steering wheel tightened as a surge of anxiety coursed through me. The cargo hold was a tightly sealed space, and I had been explicitly instructed not to open it. But now, here was this hitchhiker, claiming that something inside was a threat to everyone around. "Why should I believe you?" I asked, my voice tinged with suspicion. Alex's eyes were filled with desperation. "You have to trust me. I know it sounds crazy, but I've seen things that can't be explained. Please, you have to stop the truck, and we need to check that cargo hold." My mind raced as I considered my options. The rational part of me screamed that I should keep driving, that this was some sort of elaborate ruse or delusion. But there was something about the fear in Alex's eyes that gnawed at my conscience. I decided to pull over at the next rest area to assess the situation. As I parked the truck, I turned to Alex. "Okay, let's say I believe you. What's the plan?" He looked relieved that I was willing to consider his warning. "We need to open the cargo hold and see what's inside. If it's as dangerous as I think, we have to figure out how to stop it." With a deep breath, I exited the truck and led Alex to the back, where the cargo hold was. It was a massive, sealed container, and the lock was heavy-duty. I fetched the keys from the glove compartment and handed them to Alex. He fumbled with the lock, his hands trembling even more than before. The tension was palpable as he finally managed to open the cargo hold. As the doors swung open, a cold, metallic scent wafted out. My heart raced as we peered inside, and what I saw left me dumbfounded. It was a room filled with rows of strange, high-tech equipment, and at the center of it all was a large, sealed chamber. Alex stepped closer, his eyes wide with dread. "That's it," he whispered. "That's what we need to stop." We cautiously approached the sealed chamber, its surface covered in warning labels and symbols I couldn't decipher. Alex reached into his backpack and pulled out a small, electronic device. He pressed a button, and the chamber began to hiss as the seals released. As the chamber opened, a cloud of mist billowed out, and I caught a glimpse of something inside. It was alive, pulsating, and it sent a chill down my spine. Alex reached for it, but I grabbed his arm, my instincts screaming at me to stop him. "What is that thing?" I demanded. He hesitated, then slowly withdrew his hand. "I'm not sure, but I've heard them call it the experiment. They were planning to release it somewhere populated, somewhere it could cause unimaginable harm." The mist continued to pour out, enveloping us, and I could feel a sense of dread creeping over me. We needed to stop this, but I had no idea how. Suddenly, the electronic device in Alex's hand began to emit a loud, piercing noise. It was a warning alarm, and I could see panic in his eyes as he fumbled to silence it. "It's too late," he said, his voice trembling. "They know we're here." Just as he spoke those words, a convoy of unmarked black SUVs pulled into the rest area, surrounding us. Men in dark suits and sunglasses emerged from the vehicles, their faces impassive. One of them stepped forward, his expression cold. "You shouldn't have opened that chamber." My heart pounded as I realized we were trapped, and the danger we had released was beyond our control. Alex and I exchanged a helpless glance, and in that moment, I knew that the only way out was to trust him. As the men closed in, Alex activated the electronic device once more, causing a blinding flash of light. It disoriented our pursuers just long enough for us to make a run for it. We sprinted towards the truck, the sound of their angry shouts echoing behind us. With adrenaline pumping through our veins, we climbed into the cab and sped away, leaving the cargo and the ominous convoy behind. I didn't look back, and neither did Alex. We drove through the night, putting as much distance as possible between us and the danger we had unwittingly unleashed. In the end, I dropped Alex off at a remote gas station, and we exchanged a brief, wordless nod of gratitude before parting ways. I never saw him again, and I never found out the true nature of the cargo we had encountered that night. As I continued my journey, the memories of that eerie night haunted my every mile. I may never know the full extent of the danger we averted, but one thing was clear: sometimes, the scariest threats are the ones we can't see, and the ones we can't explain. It was a quiet, moonlit night when I received the call from dispatch, shattering the solitude of my long-haul journey. The gruff voice on the other end issued terse instructions: "Jake, we've got a special late-night delivery for you. Head to the old Scottsville Industrial Park, Warehouse 13. Make sure you're there by midnight sharp. No delays." I had been on the road for hours, fatigue settling into my bones, but there was something about that call that sent shivers down my spine. The old Scottsville Industrial Park had a reputation. Rumors of shady dealings, clandestine meetings, and strange occurrences had circulated among truckers for years. Nevertheless, a trucker's gotta do what a trucker's gotta do. I followed the GPS instructions, the path leading me deeper into the heart of the industrial area. The darkness enveloped me, and the only illumination came from the flickering, dimly lit street lamps. The silence was oppressive, save for the low hum of my engine. Finally, I reached my destination, an imposing, decrepit warehouse, looming like a monolith in the inky night. It was an unsettling sight, its windows shattered and walls marred with graffiti. A sense of dread clung to the air as I parked my truck near the entrance. As I approached the warehouse, the sound of muffled voices reached my ears, the cadence of a whispered conversation echoing through the stillness. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but my curiosity pushed me forward. I cautiously entered the building through a side door left ajar. The interior was a vast expanse of darkness, save for the dim beams of flashlights scattered throughout. The air was heavy with a pungent, metallic smell, and I realized with a chill that it was the smell of freshly spilled blood. I swallowed hard and followed the flickering lights, my pulse quickening with each step. My truck was my livelihood, and the dread of losing it was rivaled only by the dread of what I might discover in this forsaken place. As I ventured deeper into the warehouse, I began to make out the silhouettes of figures huddled together. They were engaged in something I couldn't quite discern, their hushed voices growing more fervent as I drew closer. I moved with the stealth of a cat, my heart pounding in my chest. The truck's cargo was my responsibility, and I had no intention of letting anything, or anyone, jeopardize it. Finally, I found a vantage point where I could see without being seen. What I witnessed sent icy tendrils of fear crawling down my spine. A group of shadowy figures, cloaked in tattered robes, surrounded a large, ornate altar. Upon it rested a grotesque, otherworldly artifact, an object that seemed to defy the laws of nature itself. It pulsed with an eerie, sickly light, casting eerie glows on the faces of the figures. Their chanting grew louder and more frenzied, their voices taking on an otherworldly quality that sent shivers down my spine. The warehouse seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, and the air grew thick with foreboding. Fear gnawed at me as I realized that I had stumbled upon something far more sinister than a late-night delivery. I was in the midst of a dark ritual, and I was not supposed to be here. A sudden sound, a creaking floorboard beneath my boot, betrayed my presence. The figures turned as one, their eyes locking onto me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. Panic surged through me, and I turned and fled deeper into the warehouse. The labyrinthine maze of corridors and storage rooms seemed to stretch on endlessly. Desperation clawed at me as I realized I was hopelessly lost, the sinister chanting of the figures still echoing in the distance. Suddenly, a voice cut through the darkness, a voice that sent shivers of recognition down my spine. It was the voice of my dispatcher. "Jake, you shouldn't have come here," he said, his tone laced with a chilling mix of menace and regret. I froze in my tracks, my heart pounding. "What's going on? What is this place?" He stepped into the feeble light of my flashlight, and his face was a mask of darkness and deception. "You were never meant to see this, Jake. You were never meant to be a part of this." My mind raced as I tried to make sense of his words. My own dispatcher, the one who had assigned me this delivery, was a part of whatever twisted machinations were unfolding in this warehouse. He advanced towards me, a cold smile curling on his lips. "You see, Jake, there are things in this world that should remain hidden, secrets that should never be revealed. You stumbled upon one such secret, and now you must pay the price." I backed away, my flashlight trembling in my trembling hands. "I won't be a part of this. I won't let you do whatever it is you're planning." The dispatcher's eyes narrowed, and his smile faded into a cold, steely resolve. "You don't understand, Jake. You're already a part of it. The moment you entered this warehouse, you sealed your fate." With a sudden burst of strength, I turned and ran, the dispatcher's chilling laughter echoing behind me. My heart thundered in my chest as I raced through the maze of corridors, each turn taking me deeper into the heart of the warehouse. I had no plan, no way of knowing how to escape this nightmare. All I knew was that I couldn't let them catch me, that I couldn't allow whatever sinister ritual they were performing to come to fruition. As I sprinted through the darkness, I stumbled upon a room that seemed to be some sort of control center. Rows of monitors displayed feeds from security cameras throughout the warehouse. One monitor showed the figures at the altar, their chanting growing more frenzied by the second. My eyes darted across the screens, searching for any sign of an exit. And then, I saw it, a metal door at the far end of the warehouse, bathed in a faint, sickly light. With renewed determination, I raced towards the door, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The chanting of the figures grew louder, more intense, as if they sensed my escape. I reached the door and wrenched it open, emerging into the cold night air. The sight that greeted me was a surreal blend of horror and disbelief. The warehouse, which had seemed massive from the inside, was now just a small, nondescript building in the middle of a sprawling industrial complex. The sickly light that had bathed the door had vanished, leaving behind only the pale glow of the moon. I stumbled away from the warehouse, my mind reeling with the impossible reality I had just witnessed. I had no answers, only questions, questions that would haunt me for the rest of my days. One thing was certain, though, I had escaped a nightmare that should never have been. The warehouse, the ritual, the sinister figures, all of it was a dark secret that I had stumbled upon, a secret that should have remained buried in the shadows. As I drove away from the industrial park, my truck a symbol of freedom and escape, I couldn't help but glance back one last time at the warehouse. Its walls stood silent and foreboding, a monument to the terrifying truths that lurk in the hidden corners of the world. And as I left that place behind, I knew that some secrets are better left undiscovered, some mysteries better left unsolved. Now, before we come back with brand new episodes for you, do subscribe to our channel Horror Talker. And share it with your friends and family. Stay awake and stay alert, because you never know.